I'll request that the recording is started, and you confirm when it's done, Shelley.
The recording is in place, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As it's 2 o'clock, we'll open the meeting in the usual manner and welcome everybody here and remind those present of the following: that it is being recorded, the meeting. All present should turn off their telephones where possible, or put them onto silent mode. Speakers will have control of their own microphones, but should keep them muted until invited to speak by myself, turning them off after they have spoken. The chat facility is for use by councillors only to indicate that they wish to speak. Members of the public must not use the chat function. If members wish to speak, they should request to do so using the Skype for Business chat function by typing me. Right. We'll move on to item 1, register of attendance, membership and apologies for absence. Shelley, can you take control of the register, please?
Lovely, thank you, Chairman. Councillor Gloria Johnson.
Present.
Councillor Philip Knowles.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Jackie Smith.
Shelley, Councillor Jackie Smith is currently showing as being on hold in the list of attendees, so we'll have a look into that.
Thank you, Naomi. Councillor Ian Stokes.
Present.
Councillor Mark Whittington.
Present.
Councillor Paul Wood.
Present.
Councillor Sue Woolley.
Present.
All present, Chairman, and Naomi and IT will have a look into where Jackie Smith is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've now got to ask for disclosures of interest under item 2. Any member with an interest will indicate through the chat function that they wish to disclose an interest. It appears that we're all right. There's nobody wishing to disclose an interest. I'm turning the page for the next one. It's item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of February 2021. Oh dear. Oh dear. It slipped off the top of my head. Right, we'll try again. I'll ask for any comments on the accuracy of the minutes from the previous meeting. If everybody's happy with them, I'll propose that they're approved. And have I a seconder for that?
Yeah, I'll second it, Mr. Chairman. Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. And we now have a vote taken by roll call. Over to you, Shelley, isn't it?
Certainly, thank you, Chairman. Councillor Gloria Johnson.
Yes, they're fine.
Councillor Philip Knowles.
Yes, fine, thank you.
Councillor Jackie Smith.
She's not in the meeting still, Shelley. I've got IT trying to get hold of her.
Lovely, thank you, Naomi. Councillor Ian Stokes.
Okay, yes. 4.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Whittington.
4.
Councillor Paul Wood.
Yes, 4.
Councillor Sue Woolley.
4.
Thank you. They're carried. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We now move on to agenda item 4, the action sheet, which is the updates from the previous meeting. Is there anybody who would like to comment on that? It seems all right. Some are going to go forward, but I've got nobody wishing to speak at the moment. So we'll note those then for the future and proceed to the next item on the agenda, I'll wait till you finish typing, Naomi.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. This is item 5 is the internal audit plan for 2021-2022. Is it Amjad or is it Rob going to speak on this?
Chair, it's Amjad here, so I'll be speaking those. Rob Barnett sends his apologies. He's had to take some leave, so I'll be presenting all the items relating to internal audit.
He's not supposed to take leave when we want him. All right.
What I'll do is I'll make sure I relay that back to him, Chair, so he's at the next meeting. Thank you very much. So agenda item 5, Chair, is our internal audit plan. As you'll note from the last committee meeting where we presented an indicative plan to you, and there were some discussions and we sought some feedback from the committee with regard to that. The plan stands as it was, with the exception of one of the areas that members requested was around local authority searches. So we've included that in the internal audit plan. If members can go to section 2 of our internal audit plan, which is page 18 onwards. So the audit plan is basically what we presented that at the last meeting. As I said, we've just included the local authority searches audit as well. So the plan now consists of 7 core assurance reviews, which we will scope with the management team once the plan is approved. We've also included what we call continuous assurance reviews, and there's 4 of those, which we intend to do on a quarterly basis. And again, these are areas where what we're going to look at is key fundamental controls in the local authority across both financial and operational areas, and provide the committee with a quarterly report on how those controls are working and whether there is any that aren't working or whether we need to do any further work on those. We've also, since last year, we've increased the number of audits around follow-ups. So in previous years, Chair, you'll know that we used to do 2 follow-up reviews a year. This time we've introduced doing 4 follow-up reviews, again, to provide that continuous assurance to the committee on a quarterly basis. So we'll try to link those in with the proposed committee meeting date. So the aim is to bring a follow-up report to every meeting and to provide that assurance. So really, in terms of the plan, it's what was there basically before, as I mentioned, with the exception of local authority searches, which we've now included. So I'll take any questions you may have on that, Chair.
Yes. Paul, you'd like to speak first.
Yeah, if I could then, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thanks for your report and the progress. I suppose really my only query is on disabled facilities grants. I'm pleased that you are doing that audit on that. I just wondered, in the past it's been a bit of a problem spending all the finance on it. Will it go into that? You won't just be, obviously you'll review the applications and what you've said. Will you actually determine if there is a problem with expenditure or what the reasons are if there is a problem with spending that?
Yeah, so what we'll do, Chair, we'll sit down with management and scope that. It's the reviews that we've done at other organisations, so we will cover both the financial and the operational side of it. So we will be looking at, what the funding amounts are, how they've been spent, what's left over, what's been spent is being spent in the right place, there's correct documentation in place, etc. So yes, we will ensure that we cover the financial element of it as well.
And if you could just follow up, you will look at if there's a reason preventing expenditure, because I think traditionally we haven't spent the money. There's been various reasons for that. We've underspent the budget basically, so you will look into that as well, won't you? That's be part of the process. Yeah,
I mean, we'll look into that and we'll seek management response to that. Sometimes there may be a valid reason, sometimes they may not. So yes, our review will incorporate both elements, so we'll do that.
Thank you.
All right. I did ask Naomi to send an email out to the committee to see if there was any other items that the committee would request for putting on this report for next year, the plan for next year. Nobody responded, but I have had a word with Richard, and he has suggested that he liaises with you. I have an issue, a suggestion that planning, that we check the applications to when the plans are agreed or determined by the committee or by the officers. And I'd like that to go on to the audit plan. But you will scope that with Richard, won't you, Amjad?
Yeah, so what we'll do, Chair, I mean, as I mentioned, one of the areas, we could do it two ways, Chair. We could do a full audit, and again, we need to have those discussions with the management team to look at the budgets for internal audit. Or one of the other suggestions, Chair, is that, as I mentioned, we're doing the continuous reviews, which is basically we pick 10 controls, and we look at those 10 controls on a quarterly basis. And if the committee is happy with that, one of those areas that we can look at as part of the continuous assurance is the planning applications and the process and the timings and whether the deadlines are being met. So it's really whether you want us to look at the entire control framework for planning, or whether you very much want us to look at a specific area within that planning, and in which case we can do that as part of the continuous assurance review.
I think what you said about the continuous review is quite adequate. We'll know how it's going at that stage rather than do a full-scale one.
Yeah, and one of the advantages, Chair, of continuous assurance is that because we do these reviews, we'll look at the same control on a quarterly basis. You can see on a quarterly basis what's happening, whether improvements are being made, rather than wait, let's say 6-7 months down the line for a full audit to find out something's not working. So the benefit of continuous assurance is, you know, we may look at it at quarter one, quarter two, and you'll see that everything's working quite well, and therefore there's no need to continue with that. Or you may say, actually, let's continue with that for the full year to see that, you know, everything's the way it should be.
Yeah, that's fine with me. Is it all right with the rest of the committee?
Yeah, it's fine by me, Mr. Chairman. Yes.
Thank you. Right.
Yeah, I think that'll be good.
Yeah, right. Thank you. Sue Woolley wants to speak now.
Thank you, Chairman. You're quite right. An email did come out, and as far as I was concerned, it was the searches that I was interested in being included. However, what has occurred is, are we doing any work or any checking on what I would like to, fingers crossed, think of as the post-COVID era of that governance around the audit, being sure that the auditing is of the same, I don't want to make this sound the wrong way, but just ensuring that the audit now continues as it once did prior to COVID, because obviously there's been a number of allowances that have had to be made. So it's almost like a post-COVID audit of council business, I should say.
So, Chair, in terms of our auditing, it's not really changed. So if we've audited something pre-COVID, we look at the same controls, etc., during COVID and post-COVID. So the control framework is the same. Yes, there'll be reasons why something may not have been done, and we would obviously flag that. But in terms of our audit work, we're not thinking, because it's during COVID, therefore we'll minimise the number of controls we look at or things like that. No, our audit will carry on in line with the scope, and we'll report any deficiencies that we find. So the only difference has been for us is that we've had to work, as you know, remotely in terms of our audit work. But in terms of the documentations we've requested, the work we've done, it's been the same level as prior to COVID.
Thank you for that. That's very helpful.
Richard, I think you want to come in on this.
No, really, just perhaps to remind the committee that the plan is a kind of living document, so the committee during the course of the year can make proposals and recommendations for changes as the environment changes, just picking up on what Council Will is referring to there, and the current situation and what the future working arrangements may look like. So it's probably just to make that point to the committee. And of course the other aspect is what I'm just presenting today is, if you like, is a balanced plan in proportion to the budget allocation that Council's made for the plan. So clearly any changes we make to it thereafter need to be balanced off within that context if the Council wants to avoid incurring additional costs to deliver it. So it is flexible, and it'll be on the committee's agenda throughout the next municipal year. So there's umpteen opportunities for the committee to shape it further if that's appropriate.
Thank you, Richard. I don't pressing my button right here. We've now got to, seeing there's nobody else required to speak, we need a vote now to approve the plan. Shelley, are you going to?
Certainly, Chairman. Councillor Gloria.
Sorry, wait a minute. We haven't gone through the right procedure. I propose that we accept it. I would like a seconder, please.
Yeah, I will second it again, Mr. Chairman. Yeah. Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Right, Shelley, over to you. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Gloria Johnson.
Or
Councillor Philip Knowles.
Or
Councillor Jackie Smith.
she's still not in the meeting at the minute.
Thank you, Naomi. Councillor Ian Stokes.
4.
Councillor Mark Whittington.
4.
Councillor Paul Wood.
4.
Councillor Sue Woolley.
4.
Thank you, that's carried, Chairman.
Thank you for that. That's very reassuring. We now move on to item 6, the internal audit progress report. Richard, do you want to introduce this?
I think, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This will be the final progress report of this year. Auditor will confirm that the plan has been delivered within the agreed overall plan that was approved by the committee during the start of the financial year. There are 3 items on there. I think we've got a couple of supporters of the items on there to talk more thoroughly around the issues that have been identified and more importantly the actions and improvements that have taken place since that time. So I think Councillor Dr. Mosley's here to pick up any points around the street scene stock audit, and I believe we've got Jeff Upton here today as well to give us update on the 106 information, but I'll hand over to Amjad to present the report.
Thank you. So, Chair, agenda item 6, that starts on page 31. So since the last committee meeting, we've finalised 3 further reports. A street scene stock audit, which was an advisory review, a consultants and agency staff audit, and also a housing compliance update following on from the work we did last year in that area. We've still got 1 audit remaining, which is just recently been finished. That's the IT review. So we'll be presenting that at the next meeting along with our annual opinion. On section 2 of our report, which starts at page 34, is the first one on street scene stock control. And as I mentioned, this was taken as an advisory audit because the council been working on reviewing the systems and processes in place internally and asked for us to undertake a review to basically provide some further advice and assistance, and really to any issues that we've sort of found would be included in looking at those new systems and processes. So we've undertaken that review, and as part of this there is a second part of this audit which is in the audit plan that I've just presented. So there'll be a further audit once the new systems and processes have been embedded, and that will look at those new systems and processes but also take into account the 8 actions that we've agreed with management as part of this review. And I think the 8 actions here basically related to the need to develop a stock control framework, having the right policies and procedures and guidance in place, Also looking at stock control processes around minimum, maximum stock, write-off processes, ensuring stock counts are undertaken, and ensuring that areas where stock is held, those areas are restricted. So these are the sort of areas that have come out of our advisory review. Management have accepted those, and as I mentioned, when we do the review next year, we'll as well as looking at the new system and processes that the council are introducing, we'll also pick up on these actions as well as part of that, and be able to provide a further update at that point, Chair. Would you like me to carry on, or shall I stop here and see if the members have got any questions?
Well, they're not indicating that they have any questions at the moment, so
Okay.
please proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the second review, Chair, was on consultants and agency staff, and we're given this reasonable assurance. We have raised a number of actions across, so we split the audit looking at consultants, and we also did a separate section on agency workers, and we brought it all together. So we did some sample sizing across both of those areas. I think the key message here, Chair, is that a lot of the information is held at departmental areas, and one of the issues we found was that due to some staff changes and people have moved on, some of that information wasn't readily available. So there were instances where we couldn't get evidence of contracts, or there's no evidence that contract had been signed, and whether approvals had taken place, whether the right approval forms were in place and had been signed. So a number of our actions, you'll note on our report, relate to documentation not being fully in place. We're not saying it's for all of them. So for example, we found instances where for a sample of 14 where there's no documents to prove, that there's a contract, or the right form had been signed, or the extension had been approved. So they're the sort of areas that came out of that review, Chair. The other report, Chair, was on housing compliance, to provide you with an update.
Chairman, if you're going to do each section, I have put that I would like to speak to this particular review.
Yes, I must admit I was a bit slow on the button there. Would you like to ask the question?
Yes, I'm just a little bit concerned about this consultants and agency staff. Now, I accept that the objective of the review is really very narrow, and I even would go as far as to say whether we've got the right objectives there. But take, for example, on page 36, we've got departments are responsible for the procurement of consultants for their areas, and blah, blah. What bothers me is that it doesn't feel as though anywhere has got complete oversight of all the consultations that might be taking place on behalf of the authority, and who is authorising them and signing them off, and whether it's just a bit of and in fact our auditors just sort of mentioned that wasn't able to get all information. So I would like to see that tightened up considerably, but I do accept that on this present objective, that's the auditor is doing perhaps what is asked, but I don't think what they're being asked is the right request.
Paul Wood, to follow on from that, I believe.
Yeah, that's right, Mr. Chairman. I agree with what Councillor Wood said. Actually, I was a little bit worried that if we're looking after consultants on a departmental basis, we don't seem to have, unless I'm wrong, we've got no central register of what consultants are doing. So I am a little bit concerned about that. And like Councillor Wood says, I just wonder whether we did set the right objectives really. So that's not really a criticism of the internal audit. It might be a criticism of us not setting the right objectives, but I am still concerned about, we've got the right control over consultants and are we monitoring them correctly? I don't know whether internal audit would agree. I would like to see a central register.
Can we ask Richard to answer that one, Paul?
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. I think what the framework the council's now adopted in respect of consultancy and agency is actually through a central portal, which is a system the council procured last year. So whilst consultancy budgets are devolved down at directorate level, and that's to enable those directorates in those areas where there is some need for external specialism support, usually around the planning area, but also could be around the economic development and regeneration areas. The actual procurement of consultancy, and therefore the register of consultancy work, is centrally maintained, but the responsibility sits in the respective directorate areas. So I think it's a blend of both the questions that are being asked. So there is a central portal, but actually the procurement of consultancy rests within the departments where that specialism is sought. And that's the same, by the way, for agency. It's the same approach for agency staff.
I believe that Sue Woolley asked a question that hasn't been answered, Amjad, about the scope of the audit.
So the scope of the audit covered looking at central and departmental level. I think for us, the main point was really, so we have highlighted the fact that there is not the overall side of it, but we've also then went into looking at samples across different departments. So we tried to cover it as much as we can. I think that the main issue for us was during the course of the audit was trying to get some of that documentation and evidence. As I mentioned, because it's held at departmental level, it then makes it a bit more difficult, especially where those responsible have maybe left the authority and moved on, and then it's trying to find that evidence. So from our perspective, it was a wide scope. We did cover all the key areas, but from our finding side of it, what we felt was that, you know, there was no sort of one person you can go to who can say to you, right, these are all the listed consultants and here's all the evidence. Some organizations have got a single point of contact for where everything's held and monitored, etc., which is what we didn't find the case at the council. But in terms of the scope of the audit, it was wide. It did cover central, and it covered a range of different departments with a range of different samples.
Does that answer your question, Sue?
No, Chairman, it doesn't, because I think I've just heard there Richard saying there is a central repository, and our auditor saying that if there was, that it wasn't accessible because he was going to a departmental level. I'm not certain about that. The other thing that Richard has said is, what he did do, he said that there's a register of consultancy centrally maintained. So, I mean, I just don't understand. One saying one thing, one saying the other. You know, which scrutiny committee looks at that consultancy register? Doesn't sound right. Doesn't sound clear at all.
If I can just clarify, Mr. Chairman, what I was saying was that the budgets for the procurement of consultancy and indeed agency sits in the directorate levels. So across the organisation, those budgets exist at directorate levels, and that's where Amjad's audit started. What I was saying was that to source those consultants and to source those agencies, we go through a centralised system called Advantage, which then punches out into the open market. So that system captures all those procurement activities, and therefore it maintains a register. So every time a procurement is entered into, that system captures that. So there is a central register for agency and for consultancy work. There will be a timing issue because Advantage only came in during last summer, and Amjad's work, whilst it was focused in those devolved areas, may not have identified particular activity on that register, but that's how it will be operating from the time in which it was implemented across the authority. Yeah. So I don't think we're contradicting each other. I think we're just saying we're looking at it through slightly different lenses when we're answering the question.
Yeah, and I think then when you delve deep into the departmental element of it, and you're asking for contracts, signed agreements, forms completed for approvals, there wasn't any consistency there, and of course some of the staff had moved on. So when we went in and said, you know, we got this sample, can you provide us with the contract or the relevant form, it was some of it was made available, but on a number of instances it was, well, it was held by so and so, they're no longer here, and we're not really sure where that information is. Which is the reason why we're saying there should be something more centrally, not just at the register level, but more at the documentation level as well.
Chairman, if I might just come back, I know there are other
Yeah,
people
certainly.
to speak,
Yeah.
but I think that has highlighted very clearly there is a mismatch. There needs to be a tightening up, and that the departmental level needs to cross-reference with the central level of those consultancies that have been requested. And I think actually the auditor, I hope I'm not taking words out of your mouth, but that sounds to me like what you're saying as well.
Yes, yeah, because what we'd like to see, I mean, in a perfect world, you know, of course, you're going to find, when you're doing a lot of sample testing, you're always going to find some issues. But yeah, from mine, an ideal world will be there's a register, we pick a sample from there, and we can delve down into it and go, well, here's all the evidence backing up that recruitment process. And the central register exists, that's fine. Some of the departments and some of the individuals had all the information we needed. Others, there were some elements that were missing.
Right, can we move on now? Naomi wants to confirm if Jackie Smith is now present.
Thank you, Chairman. I can see Councillor Smith is now listed in the list of participants, but I just want to check. Councillor Smith, can you hear us and everything okay?
Yes, everything's fine.
Okay, thank you. We'll get your attendance recorded. Can I please also ask councillors to try and put your videos on when you're speaking, so that we can all see you as well as hear you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Philip Knowles, you're next to speak.
Thank you, Chair. It's carrying on from, I think Richard has partly answered the question, but at what level, who decides whether a consultancy or an agency worker is required, and who authorises it at what level of expenditure? I assume it's different people or different levels for different levels of expenditure. Can you make that a bit clearer, please? Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The rules and authorisation levels of all procurement, not just on these two headings, but obviously equally relevant to this conversation, are all set out in the financial regulations of the council. So all the authorisation levels across the organisation, between the heads of service, the assistant directors and the directors, are set out in the financial regulations, and the procurement activities are driven by that. Also, we've also got the contract procedure rules, which lays out similar financial thresholds. So they're the operating boundaries in which any procurement, be it consultancy, agency or any other supplies and services, are bound by. And is that what the auditor checks when he's checking something, that it has been satisfies those rules of engagement? Certainly, they'll have cognisance to the financial regs and the contract procedure rules when they're particularly looking at these kinds of activities. Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Gloria Johnson, please.
Thank you. Philip's actually asked part of the question that I was going to ask. The other thing is, I'd like to know is, do we use agency workers on a regular basis, or are they only like sort of for temporary positions? Do we use them a lot? I never even thought we used agency workers, but it comes quite a surprise to me, really. And if I turn my video on at the moment, my connection is really quite bad, so I'm leaving my video off. Naomi, sorry.
No, that's fine, Councillor Johnson. I know that some councillors aren't able to. It's just if they can. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So, as I say, Philip's asked more or less the question I wanted, but do we use a lot of agency workers across the council?
Richard?
Thank you, Mr. I mean, I can, there's obviously directors on the meetings today, but I can answer particularly from my perspective. I'd imagine at any one point in time, the council's got less than 20, probably around 10 or 15 at any one time across the organisation. They're the business-led requirements for agency staff being brought in. Usually if there's a lag between somebody leaving a post and the ability to fill that post with another permanent officer. Also, there may be legitimate times where there's particular demand in work in an area, but it doesn't justify employing a full-time member of the team, but there may be a strong business need as to why some interim support may be needed. So it's very much a business-led activity. The way that it's financially supported is where there are gaps or vacancies within the establishment of the organisation. So it's not additional budget requirements that support agency staff. It's used within the overall framework of the salary budgets of the council. But it's orientated by business need within the respective areas.
That's fair enough, but as my impression is that agency staff always cost more than regular staff, but I understand there is a business need on occasions to employ agency to tide us over till we're viable again, sort of thing. Thank you very much, Richard.
Councillor Mark Whittington.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, apologies for not putting the video on. I'm like Councillor Johnson. I've got a bit of a slightly suspect internet signal if I put the camera on. Because actually, I was just going to. I think the point I was going to raise was just actually covered by Councillor Johnson's last comment. That obviously, when you do employ agency staff, they are employed at a premium, which I think can vary from perhaps a quarter to a third or even more extra, because as well as paying the agency worker themselves, you're also paying the agency fee, the management fee, which in some cases is going to be 25%, 30%, even some up to 40%. So obviously it does cost more to employ agency staff, but sometimes I think, as Richard has mentioned, you simply have to. And another example I imagine, Richard, is where you have staff on maternity leave, where you know a member of staff potentially is going to be away for up to 12 months, and it makes perfect sense then to bring somebody in from an agency on a fixed term contract to cover that particular individual. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I just come back, it's some good points Councillor Whittington's reference there. If we just perhaps provide some financial reassurance, of course, the council does not pay sick pay or holiday pay for agency staff, and of course the other advantage is that those costs can be switched off relatively easily, as opposed to obviously a permanent member of staff having to go through due processes. Of course, the other advantage of agency is that we cap the financial constraint of that within that budget. So basically, directors and managers will have to cut their cloth accordingly and work within the available budget. So if that means that member of the agency team has to work slightly less hours or less days a week, then that'll be the outcome, to make sure it doesn't breach any financial levels. The other point about the system that I mentioned at the start is what we're doing there is there's a competitive market within that framework portal. So we invite agencies to onboard onto that portal, and that makes them sharpen their hourly rates accordingly, because they're working within that competitive environment and making sure if they want to secure the work from the council, they have to give us competitive rates. And that's the advantage of the agency's staff requirements going through a central route through the authority, that we can take advantage of an internal market as a consequence. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. I think that's there's no further people want to questions on that. So the street scene people have got away quite light, even though they're listening in. There's nobody wants to question them. And the housing compliance update, I think we can take within item 7, which is the housing compliance, gas, Legionella, asbestos and fire safety update. Amjad, do you want to start on this one?
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much, Chair. So this was the third review that we undertook since the last meeting, and this followed on from the audit the full audit we did previously. This is an update really to provide to give you a bit of background where we are in terms of the management actions that we had previously raised in the full report. Which was brought to one of the previous committee meetings. And of the 16 actions, Chair, 7 had been fully implemented, 5 were in progress, and there were 4 actions where management were working on those. New systems and processes are being brought in, and we've been reviewing those with the management team. And I think the direction of travel is a positive one in terms of implementation. There are some actions that need to be implemented, which we know management are working on those. So what the next step is for us is in the previous item where we talked about the internal audit plan for 21-22, you will have noted that there's a full audit on housing compliance. So the intention is when we do that audit in the new financial year, we will look at the new systems and processes that management have been working on, but we will also take into account the actions that we raised as a part of this report and provide you with further assurance when we do that audit. But in terms of this audit, in terms of this update, as I said, it's in the right direction. A number of actions have been implemented, and new systems and processes have been developed, or are being developed, and hopefully that will get the other actions fully implemented as well. But what we've done in our report, we've just reiterated those actions that still require some work, and that's shown on page 62 onwards, Chair, in terms of our findings. And again, management have provided up-to-date comments and up-to-date actions in terms of what they're going to do to implement those.
Thank you very much. Before we go to members of the committee, I'll go to Councillor Robert Reid, please.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Good afternoon, members. You should be able to both hear me and see me, all being well. Yes, following on from what we've been told by the internal auditor, I'd like to sort of reconfirm that the 4 that are remaining will be completed on a comprehensive customer relationship management system. I know that's a mouthful, but when it's been implemented, we'll be able to move swiftly forward with those. The internal audit has provided with the assurance of regular monitoring, which I've given consistently now, is in place, and that senior managers and members meet on a weekly basis to track and monitor the progress in accordance with our management action plan. Indeed, today, Chairman, the improvement plan version 4 for March the 17th is the ink still drying, it's hot off the press, and we will forward this to you and indeed to all council members. So you will, of course, continue to receive updates about housing compliance and indeed how the council continues to address the issues and the concerns identified. And I'd like to just use the opportunity of exemplifying that in that our next housing presentation will be made next week by the Chief Executive. It will include the introduction and the beginning of our new Housing and Property Director, Andrew Cotton. It will indeed monitor the expectations and the ways forward that we continue to make, and indeed, most importantly, communicate with our staff to deliver the outcomes that are necessary. I think Paul Crowe is here should any members have any technical questions. Otherwise, I'll be pleased to answer where necessary. Thank you very much for including me as the introduction.
Thank you, Robert. Councillor Philip Knowles.
Thank you, Chair. Many of the part implemented elements refer to propeller, and quite a number of the requirements depend on propeller. 2 things or 3 things, first of all. Can you tell us a little bit more what propeller will do? Secondly, it says in the report that it will be implemented by the 1st of April, which is a fortnight away. Is that still the case? And thirdly, what does it cost? Thank you.
Who's going to answer that? Robert?
Can I make a suggestion that Paul Crowe answers the technical points on that, please?
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Reid, Mr. Chairman. Propeller, it's a compliance management system that allows us the flexibility to build what's called a widget. Well, we've been calling it a widget, but they've now changed the name to donuts, and it allows us to build each one for each of the compliance areas. So, for example, gas servicing, fire risk assessments, and so on. We can then build a digital process into that. So all our workflows that we've got sitting around those compliance areas can be digitalized into Propeller, and then we can monitor all our progress against our compliance requirements. So, for example, taking fire risk assessments as an example, we undertake those on an annual basis. So everything will be loaded into Propeller as to the original date, the next date that's due, and then we can put certain rules and regulations in around that, where we can put in proactive monitoring, and that will mean that we can monitor what is due before it becomes overdue, and we can also escalate those up the hierarchy to make sure that they're done by the date that they've got to be done by. Once the person is on site undertaking the risk assessment, it links into mobile working, so the risk assessments can be completed on a handheld device and then are automatically uploaded into Propeller. From that, there'll be various works and actions from it. We can then use what's called tasking to make sure that those works and actions go to the relevant people. Again, we can put monitoring into that to make sure that they're escalated if those aren't completed by the priority dates. That information from the completions of those actions and works will then feed back into Propeller, back into these donuts, and people can click on those and have a look and see where we are with regard to the FRA itself, and where we are with regard to the works and actions. We can also program in certain reports, so all those information can be produced and then sent on a certain time period up the hierarchy, so we can monitor. It will also allow Councillor Reid to actually click into it and have a look and see where we are at any stage in real time. So the benefit of it is that it's transparent, and the problem with it is that it's transparent. So we'll know exactly where we are with regard to all our compliance activities. So that will be mirrored right across all the other compliance areas. There's also something called CDMS, which is we can link into the system, which is a quality audit. What this means is that any documentation that we receive, for example, an electric certificate, gas certificates, will get audited 100% by an algorithm, and any particular issues with those will be flagged to us, and we can again resolve them, and also or flag up a certain percentage where we need to go on site and do audits. Cost-wise, unfortunately, I can't remember off the top of my head. I believe it was around about £35,000.
I'll deal with that.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Hopefully, that gives a feeling of how good this system is. If anyone's got any other particular questions around that.
I'll go back to Councillor Reid.
Can I
finish the question.
Excuse me, Chairman, can I just ask one question? Because he just did ask if anybody got anything. Is this propeller up and running now?
We've been building it. There's an implementation steering group. We've been working on this for the past few months, and we currently have 4 widgets built for 4 of the key compliance areas. At the moment, we're just doing the data validation exercise on those, just to make sure that what we are reporting is correct, and then we will be releasing those as and when we've gone through that validation exercise.
Councillor Reid, you are going to...
Thank you very much and thank you very much for the question. It's very pertinent to me. Thank you, Councillor Knowles. At this point, when you receive the improved action plan version 4, you'll see it's the second item within that, and you'll be able to monitor the progress. The installation cost for year 1 is there. It is £76,000. Pounds, and then there will be a £39,000 per annum ongoing cost thereon, but it will certainly help. Well, it will certainly do what we are wanting, and that is the information is fit for purpose and it can be monitored, most importantly. Thank you.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Knowles?
Well, just a question. It's a computerised diary system that we would have recognised 20 years ago. We did it with a piece of paper. Having said that, I understand the
it's a piece of paper that have let us down.
That is, people let you down, not pieces of paper. Integration of all these things, I understand, is important these days. I'm not decrying it anyway. But I asked the question, and I think Councillor Johnson was saying the same question. It says in the document in front of us that they will be fully implemented to go live on the 1st of April 2021. Will it go live on 1st of April 2021 in a fortnight?
If I can pick that up, Chair, we anticipate that some of the widgets will go live by the 1st of April. However, we don't anticipate we'll have the full rollout until the 30th of April.
Thank you.
Councillor Sue Woolley.
Thank you. I think these questions are both to Paul. Paul, how many solid fuel properties are there?
There's approximately 400, just over.
And is there a plan of action in place to change them onto a different fuel? Because obviously that is going to be a fairly hefty carbon footprint, and of course that then interferes with the aspirations of the council. So have we got any timescales on that?
Yes, we're currently looking at a programme. We've got a working party because it's not only just looking at the heating in the building, it's also looking at the building as a whole. So what we didn't want to do was put something in that was an upgrade into there, then find out that obviously there was problems with the insulation, windows and doors. So we're looking at the envelope as a whole, including the heating. We're putting the programme together. We're aiming to have that rolled out with everything upgraded by December of this year, and that fits in with the a green grant that we've recently procured.
Right. So just to recap, by December of this year, all of those 400 properties, not only will they have had all of their insulation, roofing, etc. Checked and improved, but they will also no longer have solid fuel heating.
Correct.
That's brilliant to hear. My second question is, on page 71, it says the 1,675 records on the asbestos register will be investigated. Can you tell me when that will be, please?
I believe the audit report says that has actually been undertaken. We've done that, and then what we did was we identified that that there was a programme that we needed to put in place for re-inspections.
Can the auditor just confirm that, please? Because, oh yes, you're right about the actions completed.
Yes, so yes, Chair. So that appendix shows all the actions. So where we talked about the 7 that had been fully implemented, that was one of those. So the original action in the report we did last year was about investigating those. Management have done that, and they provided evidence to us to show that that had been done. And as Paul just mentioned rightfully, that now there's going to be that ongoing checking process going forward. So in terms of the management action that we'd agreed at the last audit, that has been fully implemented.
So, thank you. Yes, again, I think we come back to that chestnut that I raised before around whether it's the right piece of work that's being done. So do we have a time scale for when this work will be completed in the nicest possible way, when we won't have any asbestos on the estate any longer?
Can we go to Karen Bradford? She's indicated she would like to speak on this. So.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. It actually wasn't on the asbestos question that Councillor Woolley has just asked, but I mean, I can answer the asbestos question in the fact that asbestos may not all be removed. It could be encapsulated, and sometimes it's better to encapsulate. However, the asbestos inspections are ongoing at the present time, and in each situation may be different. So do we remove it or do we encapsulate it? And that's not just for the housing properties, that's also for our full property estate as an authority as well. So hopefully that kind of reassures you. I know Paul's given you a figure on the amount of solid fuel houses with solid fuel. I just would like to just raise caution there in the fact that I don't think the figure that Paul actually gave was correct. So I'd like to just come back to the committee on that one, because I thought it was slightly higher than what Paul says, but we can confirm that to you. Yes, the Green Homes grant to local authorities delivery phase 2 has been offered to us, which is £850,000, and that is to look at our properties which have got solid fuel heating and issues with windows, issues with insulation, and we'll be looking to utilise all of the 850,000. We need to do that by Christmas of this year. Now that's not long off. Now we'll certainly be front loading that by utilising the grant which the government has given us, but I'm sure the programme's going to go on from them, because with the best will in the world, I think to get nearly all of these properties moved from having the assessment done, having their surveys done, moving them and proper consultation with our tenants and moving them off solid fuel heatings. Yes, we want to do it as quick as possible, but to say we'll have all of those done by Christmas, I couldn't give you that reassurance at this present time until the survey's been done and we clearly understand the implications of the amount of work that needs to be done.
Is that all of your queries resolved, Sue?
Well, I suppose I would just come back to Karen with the encapsulate or remove. It's the timescales. I really would like to see some. We are aiming to complete all of this work by a set date. We know it won't be tomorrow, but I just feel that we need to tighten things up a little bit and have some deadlines. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll come back to the committee with some outline timelines on that one to give you some more reassurance.
Thank you very much, Karen. We'll revert back now then to Councillor Mark Whittington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I want to sort of perhaps come back and ask a few more questions around Propeller, but also the nature of the data as well, because from what Paul was saying, it seems like Propeller is a very, very good system that potentially will solve all of our sort of data processing requirements and will sort of replace all those spreadsheet models which goes into the present situation that we're actually in. I'm struggling a little bit because we're saying that Propeller's going to be going live fairly soon. Now, obviously, in order for it to go live, there's going to have to be quite a bit of data fed into it. But we also know that quite a number of our reviews are still outstanding and won't be taking place for quite some time. It's just my concern is that potentially that we might load in some of the data that potentially is incorrect, and my concern is making sure that we only load correct data into the system, because obviously you can have the best IT system in the world in terms of its functionality, but if the source data is incorrect, it doesn't matter how great your system is, it still won't give you the answers you're looking for. So I just want a bit more clarity around how the data is being checked, especially if we're relying upon some historic data to populate Propeller when it's first put into operation. And then a couple of questions around the nature of Propeller itself. I am guessing that a number of other local authorities presumably are using it. I'm just wondering what feedback anybody's got on how they're finding the system works. And the third question around, I would imagine, I'm guessing that within the market for this particular type of software, then there may very well be other systems in the market that are competitors to Propeller. I'm just a bit of information about why Propeller, in our opinion, was better than any other potential systems that might be available. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for those questions. Who wants to attempt to answer that? I think Paul Crowe should, really.
Thank you, Chair. If I pick up the data query, as I mentioned earlier, we've been working on this for a number of months. Our starting base data is from the Apex system, which is our stock condition database. So that contains all our properties. So what we're doing is we're loading the information out of there, getting it into the system, and then carrying out a set of sense checks. So, for example, with the heating servicing contractors, we're looking at all the data that we've got that they're carrying out their annual servicing. So that includes all the gas properties, the oil, the LPG, the solid fuel. We're also double checking with some of our staff to make sure that that's run through and validated. We're never going to get to 100% accurate data. I think it's just one of those things that most organisations have to live with. But what we will do, as and when we're out doing the visits, we will update the information. The other thing is making sure that is running through some past programs and improvement data, that we've got any improvement requests that have come off through as a one-off, or there was any upgrades to the heating, and that's fed back into into that stock validation. Just making sure that that's actually been put into Apex, and Apex has been updated accordingly. So we've got that going on, and that's going on across most of the compliance areas. With regard to things like FRAs, it's making sure that we've got all the properties that are relevant in terms of what requires an FRA, and also making sure that we're picking up all the various blocks. The good thing about it is that we use UPRN numbers within Apex, so that's made this slightly easier than it would otherwise have been. Does that answer the data element?
Are you happy, Mark?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Yes, because obviously, I appreciate the point, Paul, you're making, that no system can claim to be 100% accurate.
Yeah.
But it's a question of what percentage level do we think we're happy with? It could be 90, it could be 90, or 95, 90, whatever the figure is.
Yeah. Sorry, apologies. There's one other thing I just forgot to mention on that. We're currently undertaking a stock condition survey, and that's taking place. It's been going on for about the past month. That's due for completion end of November, December. So the information from the stock condition survey will also feed back into this.
Right. Thanks, Paul. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. With regard to the other query regarding other local authorities, I believe there is one other, and I'm hoping that Councillor Reid can help me on this. There is another local authority that is using it. From what I understand, the regulator, social housing regulator, has been very, very interested in the system and is actually logging in and looking at it. They think it's really, really good. The local authority as well as I believe has confirmed that it's made a major difference to digitalising the processes, because obviously what happens if people leave and it's paper based, it tends to go with them. So in this case, the digital processes are driving the people. So they haven't had any issues with regard to that with knowledge retention. The actual data that sits within there's all that transparency for management. Feedback's been really, really good. We had an additional demonstration to the property services team yesterday for the non-domestic commercial properties. And they're also very, very interested in using it, because everything they've got in place at the moment is heavily paper-based.
Karen, you want to come in? Didn't you? You've requested to come in.
Thank you, Councillor Stokes. It was just to add to what Paul said, and hopefully to help with answering the question of Councillor Whittington. We've explained the system to the social housing regulator. They are very keen on what we're doing, and like Paul said, is looking closely at this, because our situation here at South Kesteven, we're not on an island on our own, and they are finding these difficulties with non-compliance up and down the country. And of course, they are there to help support as much as intervention. And if they can, we've had lots of discussions about where's best practice, where can we go and speak to, who can we actually go to, what that good looks like, and they do feel that this propeller system for the compliance matters of our service is absolutely excellent. I am aware of the immense amount of work that's been going on around data cleansing, and as Councillor Whittington says, there's never anything 100%, but we're going to get flipping damn right close to it on my watch, and that data cleansing is so important, because a system's only as good as the data entries that you've got. So the data cleansing in building of the system has been critical. And over the time they will be checked and double checked because of the survey information that will also then be added and updated, and of course fire regulation, fire risk assessments and electrical certificates and asbestos. So every time this will build a whole picture of a house, so you'll click on one house on one road, and it will give you all of that data around that house, around the survey information, who's living there, tenancy, compliancy of the whole lot around that one unit. So quite a strong, positive, I believe, piece of software to help us manage the survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. The next councillor on the list is Councillor Paul Wood. Paul.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, first of all, I'm pleased with the audit report that's showing we're making good progress. That's good. I have a few concerns, and it's about stock condition survey, and that's been mentioned by a few of you. Paul Crowe mentioned it, and Karen, you alluded to the stock condition survey. It's all about data. It just concerns me that obviously if we're using bad data, if we don't know what the situation is with our properties, then it's impossible to know what we should be doing. So I'd really like to know a little bit more about how that's going, the stock condition survey. How are we actually carrying it out? And I noticed, I think, Paul Crowe, you said you thought it would be complete in November, December. The audit report said October, and I know you can't be too precise on that, but my main question is, I think the stock condition survey is vital. If we don't get that right, we don't get the right information. How's it actually being carried out? Are we sending teams of people around, or are we making certain assumptions? How detailed are we going into the stock condition survey?
Yeah,
open question.
Apologies.
Yeah, if you could.
Yeah, no answer.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor. We're using a company called FFT. We're not collating any information. We're accessing or attempting to access 100% of the properties. You're right. It's all about the quality of the information that they're collating on site. So what we've put in place is there's going to be there is an audit requirement over the period they're collecting the data, but we've also front loaded that. We'll be carrying out, or we have been carrying out, a number of additional audits to make sure that the data that they're producing is of a high enough standard, and also it reflects the actual the property. And that's how we decided to make sure.
And are we collecting basic information then? Are we looking in the roof spaces? Are we deciding what sort of insulation the properties have got?
Yeah, we are. We're doing that. We're also collecting obviously the heating type. We're also collecting additional information with regard to some of the compliance areas that you would not normally do through a stock condition survey, but we've decided, well, we've got people in there, we can do that. We're also looking at slightly widening that as well to some potential person-centered risk assessments. It's an opportunity.
Is that going quite well at the moment? They said it's been going about a month, I think you said, didn't you, Paul?
Yeah, it's going really well. The person that is in charge of the project is a chap called Phil Broad. He's got a lot of experience on the stock condition surveys, and the company FFT, even though I say that I've had no involvement in the procurement process, because that was ongoing prior to me joining. I've come across FFT before on the basis of stock condition and procurement, and they've always been very, very good.
Okay, yeah, that seems to be going quite well. You're happy but you agree it's a vital piece of information, isn't it?
Absolutely. Okay. I mean, it'll feed back into our asset management strategy as well. So our environmental strategies, etc. So it's a key piece of work.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Karen, you want to come back in?
Yeah, if I can just add to that, in the improvement plan, of course, that you've seen previously, we moved the HRA. We took a key decision, of course, and moved the HRA budget into this year. So there's a budget of £780,000, Councillor Wood, to meet the costs of the surveying. As we're aware, these surveys should be done every 5 years, which is most important. So then, of course, all that information once collected, of course, with your background, Councillor Wood, you will know that then forms a housing business plan. So one of the key things when all of this information has come forward, and if we know out of the 6,000 properties we've got over the next 4 years to replace 6,000 sets of windows, that is then worked into our business plan and our HRA budgeting to take us forward. So yeah, the surveys will be comprehensive, attached to a property. It's going to be clear, and then after that, after the 5 years period, then we'll start rolling out a new programme of surveying to make sure we're up to date. The key thing though is the survey, the data, use the data to form the housing business plan, and it's the housing business plan which then assists us in setting the HRA budgets, and that's one of the reasons why we only set a HRA revenue budget for 1 year, because we need to inform this budget by what's coming out of the surveying.
Are you happy, Paul?
Yeah. Yes, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Karen's right. Yes.
Right. The next speaker, ironically, was going to be Robert Reid, although he's put down he wants to speak again. So we'll deal with this at the same time.
Thank you very much, Chairman. All the way along, there's 3 points I wish to make, listening to the further dialogue. One is that where the stock condition survey is concerned, I've always wanted to insist that local knowledge is practically fed into the survey, and that is actually happening. I'm sure Councillor Paul Wood would like to know that. Secondly, Karen has very eloquently endorsed the regulator's interest in the propellers mechanism, but most importantly, Sue Woolley made reference to the solid fuel replacement system, and we have said about the green energy being employed, particularly with quantum electric. We are mindful, and I think it's very important that we should never forget to say this, and we really are mindful of fuel poverty as well, that in these upgrades and in these conversions that it's not just, yes, carbon footprint is important, but fuel poverty is as well. Thank you very much for me to be able to include that, Chairman.
Thank you. I think we've discussed that item very thoroughly this afternoon.
Chairman, I'm really sorry. It's Sue here. I do just wonder if I could just ask Councillor Reid. He's just mentioned about fuel poverty and these upgrades. Can I be assured that at every opportunity solar panels will be going on council property, so that at least that can negate some of it, and then hopefully we won't have any of these blessed wind farms that some of the other districts seem to be very keen on?
Am I to come back, Chairman?
Certainly.
Okay, fine. I can answer that in part. We have had an electric diversification process that has also had some solar panels, particularly on some properties in Stamford, which has not worked out to be looking after electric bills and fuel poverty, which is why I mention the quantum electric. Part answer, but it does have to work, and some of the inspirations recently of the past have not actually addressed fuel poverty. If anything, they've actually caused us some compensation payments where medical issues are concerned. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, could I add to that?
Certainly.
Councillor Reid's correct. There was an issue with some Roynty electric heaters that were linked to solar panels at the actual cost of running them. We've actually removed those, and we stopped the programme a number of months ago with regard to that. We've done some investigation into other areas, some Dimplex quantums, as Councillor Reid mentioned. We're also looking at ground source, air source, and what we have identified is 3 properties that we're going to, we've already commenced an assessment of them, and that's the building envelope as a whole, and we've come up with a series of recommendations for those 3. So we will be piloting some renewable technology in those. Also, some of that will be linked to solar. We'll be also fitting monitoring meters in there as well, just to assess usage, etc. And I believe the plan with those would be to once we've done that, to invite councillors to come out and have a look at those.
Happy with that, Sue?
I certainly am, Chairman. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Councillor Gloria Johnson is the next.
Right, thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to say, on listening to this debate, that I feel that a great deal of improvement and hard work has gone into this HRA thing, and I'd like to compliment Robert and Karen for the hard work that they're doing, and it seems very, very positive to me listening to it. I'm not very into a lot of the things that's going on, but listening and all the questions that's being asked and answered, everything looks very positive and it's on the up, and I think given the time they've achieved an awful lot, and I think they'll achieve what they're saying. Thank you very much.
Karen, you were down. You wish to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Johnson, for those warm wishes and those warm words. It is a full team event, without a doubt. Yes, Robert and I may be the ones which have got the foot on the gas to get all this done, but the delivery is very much by the team. Chris, Paul, Helen, the whole team, and the team beneath them have been a huge support in turning this around. And so is the PAs. You know, the amount of paperwork that we're having to produce and improvement plans and documentations, the links in with the social housing regulator. It's a whole team event. We've got the spotlight on it. We've got the focus on it, and improvements are starting to be seen. I only met yesterday, and so did Councillor Reid, with our new director. Our new director clearly knows the challenge. He starts with us on the 31st of March, and he certainly will be also hitting the ground running with what's expected. So yeah, I think it's necessary, but whole team of. But thank you for your comments. Thank you, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Karen. I think that we've discussed that very thoroughly, and I thank the committee for the questioning. We'll now move on to item number 8, the property searches update. I think you want to introduce this, Councillor Reid.
I'd be privileged to do so. I think it's something that, albeit the questioning has also come from Governance and Audit, it's crossed a lot of councillors, particularly where land searches, full searches are concerned. I had promised Fredco to in their action plan to give a graphical presentation, which I had ready for their last meeting, and then they didn't call for it, so I'm really pleased to be able to use it here and provide the information graphically in the report. It mentions in the report the obvious that the stamp duty holiday has caused for more full searches. The personal searches did go up, and they've now gone down. One of the keys to us actually being able for that to happen has been the additional member of agency employed staff since October 2020, and they have been a particularly qualified and professional person. To that end, it is not just about what I'm presenting. I'm sure you would want to draw comfort from an assurance that I need to steer this service, particularly on full searches, onwards, because owing to the pandemic, in discussions of the number of searches that are coming forward, we've made a realisation that owing to the economic volatility within our country, we're quite likely to see some downsizing in properties as well as other situations. And so therefore I'm expecting that the full searches activities to remain reasonably high. To that end, as I speak to you today, the ability of the agency temporary in place has now been, we renew it by 3 monthly amounts. We're keen that the same personnel stays with us, and so we have got 3 months from the 1st of April now programmed, and that's happened today, during which time we are going to look for another person to be of a permanent nature within this department, and that in so doing we need to make sure that obviously beyond advertising, that training and their ability is key to the speedy process. When there is one anomaly that is unfairly weighted to us as a local authority, sometimes solicitors and indeed legal services for house transactions use an agency. Sometimes the agents don't use the requests of their search their searches expediently when they've turned them round. So that's one thing to be cautious, but it's beyond our control. Thank you very much. It's been good to present this, and I welcome any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Sue Woolley.
Right, Chairman, I'm going to be a bit grumpy about this one because, okay, it's a report, but to be honest, it's a waffly report. It barely says anything at all, and I really, really do think that as a committee we should be looking at this a lot harder. I'm not happy to see that there seems to be various issues as far as technical issues are concerned, and IT, and that systems have to, what's that bullet point, which have to be released by the IT team. We are apparently still around about 19 days. I don't know whether 19 days average. I don't understand why we aren't looking at the, there is an example about the turnaround time of between 5 to 7 days of some of the best authorities. And yes, obviously the worst are 25 days plus. So, I mean, for me, South Kesteven, I would always want to be one of the better ones. I don't see anything here about where that improvement is going to be coming from. I don't see anything. Again, we go back to, we've had a conversation today around joining data up and systems up. I don't see anything here where that's being proactively followed through. It's a report, but it says nothing. So sorry to be very negative, but I am being truthful.
Paul Wood.
Yeah, well, first of all, I would like to thank Councillor Reid for bringing the report forward. I've got some problems with it. I suppose my biggest problem is around the turnaround time. I noticed we're sort of saying it's sort of approximately 4 weeks at the moment. Looking at the website, I noticed previously, up until about October last year, we were saying that we'd do a turnaround time in around about 15 days, but now that's been extended to 22 days. I must admit, I don't think that is acceptable. So this is where I probably agree with you, Councillor Woolley. I'm not sure whether other councils seem to do a lot better, and I think we ought to try. I appreciate that Councillor Reid has taken steps to try and improve things, and that's good. But I think I must propose a recommendation that we put in our report that we would like to see, well, the website altered and aim to actually get these done in less than 15 days. I don't think we should be going into the 20-odd days. So my proposal is that we make an amendment and we actually recommend that we have an aim to turn around the turnaround time on searches is less than 15 days. I don't know whether anybody else will support that.
I would suggest, Councillor Wood, that, as I said earlier, we should be aspiring to be one of the best, and the best are doing it in 5 to 7 days, unless we can have good reason for not being able to do it in 5 to 7 days. I think that's what we should aspire to.
Robert, would you like to?
I would like to, but I will comment. I noticed that Karen Bradford has asked to speak, so I'll bear to that first. I know exactly what I want to say, and I'll do the checks and balances on what she says. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, yes, this has been a little bit lumpy, I think it's fair to say, certainly over the last year, where we've actually had some of the times when we have met good levels of response, and some of the time it's been stretched out. I'd just also like to note that at the present time we're running with 2 vacancies as well. We are trying to recruit at the moment, so that's not going to be helping of the performance of the team. If I can cast members' mind back, is that at the moment moment this team actually do sit within planning, and part of the corporate restructure was to remove this, to take this out of planning and to line this up with the legal support that's sometimes necessary for these processes. And of course this will be moving under our monitoring officer and under our new head of democratic services when he joins us in May. So within a month this will be actually under Shaheen. We are recruiting. We have brought extra staff in to deal with the high demand points, but as members are aware, that that does cost the authority quite a lot of money. But taking all that account, I think when we're fully staffed, we should be able to bring this performance down to certainly a good level. I would love to be in the realms of responding in 5 days, and then I'm certainly not going to be having the phone calls when people are still waiting for searches for properties and things like that, which is really unfortunate, and we don't want to be there. We want to be that supportive council. So certainly I see a positive future for this team, and they need to be fully staffed to make sure that they're performing to their optimum.
Thank you, Karen. Jeff Upton, please.
Yeah, sorry, Chairman, I hadn't been, let me put my camera on. Apologies, I hadn't seen Karen had put her name in the chat box, so I think Karen's probably covered it more than adequately in my stead. But I would also point back to the report. So we are recommending a quarterly update back to the committee, and I think during that period, as Karen just mentioned, in terms of recruitment, there's also some process improvements that we're looking at as well to support the team during this period. And obviously we've had the stamp duty holiday extended, and I think with that whole picture, with the resource picture, as well as the volume of work, I think the graph does show that it's on a fairly stable, if not declining trajectory in terms of times. I think the next quarterly update will be appropriate in terms of giving an update on the resources and the turnaround times. But it has been a particularly challenging time for all authorities across the country. But yeah, echo the thoughts as well in terms of the aspirations to reduce times. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Philip Knowles, I didn't miss you. I just wanted the Chief Exec to respond to Paul Wood's comments, but you're down to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. She may wish to respond again in a moment. 18 months ago, this came up to finance, and I asked a question about searches then, and you could have written this report then, saying, oh, we've got problems with staff off, we're looking for more staff, it's just a temporary blip, we'll get it down, whatever. We got all the same guff then as we have now, and quite frankly, as Sue and I think Paul has said, that they're just a set of words saying we know it's not very good and we'll get it better. I would have thought at the end of this there would be some targets, some specific targets to say we were down to 15 by X, target is get down to 5 to 10, 7, whatever it used to be, and we will be down there in 6 months, and that is a commitment, and we will do what is necessary to get it done. At the moment, it's just, well, it isn't very good. It's stayed constant since last August, September. I remember being told in September it was going to be a lot better, and it went down for 1 month in November, and now it's gone up again. I don't think the report is very helpful. And it doesn't set any sort of targets that we can look to measure this against, and I'm disappointed with that. I'm sure Karen wants to say something there. I'll upset you now, Karen.
Please come in, Karen.
Not at all, Councillor Knowles. I'm sorry I wasn't aware of your frustration 18 months ago around the team. I know we brought in extra resources, and interestingly, we actually commissioned the people to assist us, and we were commissioning an organisation from London, certainly over the huge peak periods around October, November and December, to assist us in keeping the numbers to these kind of levels before they went and spiked even more. Yes, I'd love to sit here today and said, you know, Councillor Knowles, by June I'm going to have it under 15 days. I can't say that until I know I've got the resources in place. But as soon as I know we've got a transfer of the team across to Shaheen, it's embedded in there, the processes have been reviewed, the right staffing levels are in place, then I'm going to be able to say to you, Councillor Knowles, it's going to be 5 days. But when I can do that, I will do, of course. But
thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, Karen. I won't hold my breath.
Okay. No, I wouldn't like you to either.
Councillor Paul Wood, can you come back to me and say whether you wanted to add a number 3, recommend it to the recommendations?
I think so, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I think we do want to add something. I mean, I've heard what everybody says. I accept what Karen says, and yeah, I think we are making efforts in the right direction. But I think we, as a committee, should actually make a recommendation 3 that we want to see the turnaround time reduced to under 15 days.
Well, I would accept that and second it. And
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair, may I?
Yes, indeed.
We've got to put in by when. Any worthwhile objective for any business has a time scale on it. You can't just say we want it reduced, because in 2046 they'll say we've got it down to 22 and we've fulfilled the we've achieved that objective. If we want it down to 15, we've got to say it by
within a certain time scale. Yes, I agree. Yeah.
Can you specify the time scale?
Chairman, can I just respond?
Come on then.
God, thank you. I can understand that the want from the committee that we want to get it under 15 days as quick as possible. However, this is also predicated on me having members of staff in place, and it's also, of course, about the level of applications as well. So if I've got all of a sudden a spike in applications due to the government's giving greater support for first-time buyers, or for extending no stamp duty to be paid and stuff like that, where we're seeing huge amounts of business coming through, unless we throw further costs at it, then it's going to remain, it will fluctuate. But please be reassured that I will bring it down as quickly as we possibly can, and Shaheen and I will work on this and get this team operating efficiently as soon as. And, I'm coming to governance and audit all the time, so I'm sure you'll hold me to account on it. But let me bring a further report to your next meeting and see where we are then, and with a clear plan about how we're going to achieve this as soon as possible. I don't think 15 days is probably good enough. I think we can do better with the right systems in place and the right staff in place.
Councillor Robert Reid.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I understand where everybody's coming from, but I do think you have to be fair to us with the volume of applications and the nature in which unpredictably they can come. It's no excuse, and I'd like to join with everybody in saying they come down. Yes, compliance wise it should be under 20 days. Yes, I'd like to aspire as Sue Woolley, and I do try to do so, as being one of the better district authorities, and yes, we'd like it to be further down. As far as it moving to legal and democratic services and Karen's inspirations, I would like to see it's passed to that department in a proper place, and I've been working to that end as well. Thank you.
Councillor Sue Woolley.
Thank you, Chairman. Going back to a comment that Karen's made and a little bit of what Robert said, I think the bit that we appear to be missing is the planning side of things. We know, for example, how many houses and developments have been passed through the planning committee recently. South Kesteven is only ever growing, so for me it would be a very reasonable suggestion to go, that department's going to need more resource more quickly, because if we don't get it right, and that time gets longer, then unfortunately it reflects badly on the council, because people won't move here because they'll go, oh, if you want to try and exchange on a house in that area, it takes you, you know, I exaggerate, but 6 months. But so we want to encourage people to be moving into our area. We want to have a slick process. So I would even go so far as to say, you know, this is a piece of work that needs to be on the front burner and being put in place at the earliest opportunity to make sure it's well resourced. If it means that it's got to be aligned with another piece of work so people can multitask, well then so be it. But I really, really would beg that we think very carefully about this particular side of things within the authority.
Oh, thank you for that. So I personally think that we should accept the recommendations on the report and ask for a report to the next meeting to show that it improves. Part of the action plan.
Yes.
What do the committee say to that?
Agree.
Can we ask for a report, Chairman, on as you've just said, but putting in those words the Councillor Wood has used? Can we ask for an improving picture, a report where we expect to see an improving picture? That does at least then give Karen a bit of wriggle room as far as how quickly the improvement takes place. But we do need to be seeing an improvement upon improvement.
Yes, I agree with that. Mark Whittington, you want to?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I really support that previous comments from Sue, from Councillor Woolley. I think with any sort of plan for improvement, you need to see progress over time. You know, it's not always going to be progress in the right direction. I mean, you know, it may be a case of a couple of steps forward, one step back, but as long as progress is going in the right direction, I think that's really what I would like to see, and possibly some sort of indication of timescales as well. Because once you start to put a plan together with sort of actions and things you'd like to see with some timings next to it, it gives you the ability to monitor the progress, because I think that's really important for us. You know, we're not saying, I don't think, that everything can be put right overnight, and it may take a number of months or whatever the time frame is, but I think we do need over time, Mr. Chairman, to see a movement in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, certainly well spoken. Paul, you'd like to speak, would you?
Yeah, it's just to really, I suppose, really, Mr. Chairman, agree pretty much with what you said. I think we should ask for another report, and I think we should ask for that report to demonstrate how we can get it down, get the turnaround time down, and so I'd be quite happy to go along with that. But I think we should put that as a third recommendation in our report, that we ask for that report to come back to the next committee with a view of how we can get the turnaround time down.
That's basically an action plan, isn't it? I quite agree, and I'll accept that. And move the 3 recommendations. So there's nobody else wishing to speak. I presume you'd like to second that, would you, Paul?
I would very much so, yes, Mr. Chairman, yes.
Right, we'll move to the vote then. Shelley?
Carry on.
Would you like a recorded vote, Chairman, or a vote by exception?
Well, it's academic, really. There's only 7 of us.
We'll do a recorded vote. Not a problem. Councillor Gloria Johnson.
4.
Councillor Philip Knowles.
4.
Councillor Jackie Smith. Councillor. Thank you. Councillor Ian Stokes.
4.
Councillor Mark Whittington.
4.
Councillor Paul Wood.
4.
Councillor Sue Woolley.
4.
Thank you. That's carried unanimously, Chairman. Thank you.
I hoped it would. Thank you very much. We now move on to item number 9, the 2021 accounting policies and changes to the deadline for the publication of the statement of accounts. I think it's Alison Hall Wright to present this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As members are aware, the Council is required to review the accounting policies it will apply to all material balances and transactions in the statement of accounts on an annual basis. The policies have been reviewed and produced in line with the SIPFA Code of Practice on Local Authority Accounting. Appendix A of this report details the accounting policies that will be applied to the 2021 Statement of Accounts, and I can confirm that there has only been minor changes to the accounting policies that were approved for the 2019-20 accounts. The main point for members to note is that the accounting policy for interests in companies and other entities detailed on page 93 has been amended to include Leisure SK. As the company has only been operating for 3 months, group accounts will not be produced until 21-22, but relevant information will be included in the company's and other entities disclosure note, which is the same process that we follow for Invest SK and Environment SK. The final point for members to note is that the publication dates quoted in paragraph 1.3 of the report have now been confirmed as the 31st of July for the draft accounts and the 30th of September for the audited accounts. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Alison. Are there any questions of the officer? It would appear not. You've got a fair run, and I'd like to recommend to the committee that we accept your report.
Yeah.
As set out. Have I a seconder?
Second, Mr. Chairman. Yes.
Who was that?
Paul Wood.
Paul Wood. Thank you, Wood. I didn't. You're not on my screen at the moment, Paul. Right.
Yeah, dropped off.
You've dropped off quite. Right. We'll go to the vote then. There's no speakers.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Gloria Johnson.
4.
Councillor Philip Knowles.
4.
Jackie Smith. Councillor Smith.
Councillor Smith, I've unmuted you, so you should be able to speak.
Yeah. 4. Councillor Ian Stokes.
4.
Councillor Mark Whittington. Councillor Whittington.
Sorry, 4.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Wood.
4.
Councillor Sue Woolley.
4.
Carried unanimously, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Where are we? Item. There's no work programme included in the draft programme of meetings. It's currently being developed, so we're not having further confirmation of future meetings. A new work programme will be developed once the draft programme is in its final stages, and I believe that Richard is going to formulate that and let us know when it's happening. Oh, excuse me. I've got any other business in item 10, and I can now declare that the meeting is closed and ask Shelley to stop the recording at this stage. Thank you all for your attendance.
Thank you, Chairman.